Hello all and welcome to this interesting stream on introduction to Openlayers. I am really excited to have this next 60 minutes with you guys. Openlayers is one of the first topic that I learned when I started working in the WebGIS industry, and I think that this has been one of the best JavaScript framework that I have used for streaming the data or showing the data on the map. Of course, there are different use cases for different libraries, but I believe that Openlayers is kind of like you can use it everywhere. Doesn't matter, even if you want to use 3D data, you can still use like Cesium JS Openlayers plugin to have 2D and 3D data both working side by side. So thanks a lot for joining in today. And you might see that I have this link open, which is learnjsonline.com. So this is one of the initiatives done by our company, Rotten Graves Private Limited, where we are focusing more on training more and more people in open source GIS stack. To begin with, of course, we are going to go ahead with Openlayers, PostGIS, and GeoServer, but that's not the end of the world. We are going to introduce really interesting topics like PyGeo API, GeoPython for data analysis, GeoDjango for creating the complete web framework application. We are also going to deep dive into MapStore 2, which is a ready-to-use framework for a lot of geospatial use cases. We will be also seeing different JavaScript frameworks like Mapbox GLJS or even MapLibre GLJS. We did a webinar previously on Leaflet.js, so if you have not watched it, you can just go to the LinkedIn page of Rotten Grapes, or you can also go to the uh, or you can also go to the webinars page, and this is where you can see put map on the web. So this is the webinar that we did long time back, but again, this was also a really interesting webinar where we introduced Leaflet.js, and in this one we are going to introduce Openlayers. So I would like to uh, tell you more about this initiative first, just in a quick couple of minutes. So we are running this Technical Tuesday webinars, where the idea over here is that we will be taking webinars every Tuesday of every first Tuesday of every month. And in this, we will be covering various different topics such as Openlayers, PostGIS, GeoServer, CesiumJS, Python, etc., etc. If you are interested into submitting a topic, feel free to go to this LearnJS online page and have a fill out this form so that we can get back to you. If you are also interested into getting updates on new webinars specifically for any topic that you are interested in, you can again put your email, put your name, and you can select that what is the topic that is interesting for you. Now, having said that, this is all we wanted to cover in the introduction part, and now it comes. Now let's get started with the open layers. Updates on new webinars specifically for any topic that you're interested in. You can again put your email, put your name. So I'll just pause this, and yeah. So first of all, I would like to have a brief introduction to the open layers itself, or rather than I would actually like to start talking about web web framework which allows us to put any kind of map on our uh, front end application. It doesn't matter if it's open layers or Mapbox or Leaflet or even Google Maps or anything like that. There is a concept, there is a logic behind how these maps are built, and I believe that if we understand the concept, we will be able to switch from open layers to Leaflet, from Leaflet to Mapbox and MapLibre in no amount of time, because ideally the logic is going to be same, doesn't matter which library that you pick. It's just that the nomenclature will be different, the methods, the name of the methods will be different, but underlying logic is always going to be same. So let's just have a quick look at what the logic is for building any kind of web map application. So to begin with, you can consider that this is what your map is. So I'll just put the name map over here. All right, let me just make it big so that everyone can read. All right, I'll just make this one smaller so that everyone can read. Okay. So the idea over here is that when we say that we are creating a map, essentially what we are saying is that we want to show something on our web page which has location data attached to it, and which is interactive. That means I can play around with the map, I can go to the location that I want. Then there are few things that makes this map component. One of this thing is the view. So what is view? View essentially talks about all the basic settings that you do to view the map. So it can be things such as like what should be the center of the map, what should be the projection of the map, what should be the zoom of the map, what should be the tilt angle of the map. So all of these things are part of the view class. Now again, what I want to do is I want to actually make you understand the concept rather than going into open layers. So for every map we have to define the view. Now when we say that we have to define the view, we don't have to stick with that view all the time. That means if you set the center of the map something, let's say 71,21 in terms of longitude and latitude, then it doesn't mean that you cannot change it programmatically. Let's say if you want to programmatically keep moving your center every now and then every single mapping library has these methods or these ways of updating these different properties of the view. So that means you can programmatically also change the zoom of your map. So if you're on zoom level 5 and if you want to create some kind of function which will make your map on zoom level 10, you can do that. Similarly, you can change almost every setting. Projection, you can change it. The tilt of the map, you can change it. So all of these things you can change. Then the next one is the layers, which I believe is the meat of any mapping application. Why is that? Because layers are actually the things which holds the data. Now this data can either be in a file format in your own computer, or we can also stream this data from anywhere in the world. So if your data is sitting in some, let's say, database like Postgres, or if you have already created a OGC WMS or WMTS, or let's say OGC features API or any kind of service somewhere out in the world, and now you want to use it in your map, you can do that. If you have GeoJSON, you can do that. If you have a GeoTIFF, you can do that. So all these are type of layers, and layers does not only contain the data types, but it also contains the uh, custom data types that can be built on top of the existing data. A very good example of this can be cluster. You might have seen that in lot of applications, uh, when we are at a bigger zoom level, that means we are looking at bigger area at any point of time. Instead of seeing the markers, we see a circle which has a count, let's say like 15 or 20, anything like that. And as we start zooming in, the count starts to reduce, and at one point we actually start seeing the data rather than seeing the count. And that is what clustering is all about. One of the other ways of visualization or one of the other type of layer can be heat map. Heat map is also very interesting, and I'm pretty sure we all have seen heat map of things such as earthquake, where it denotes the intensity, and intensity is always denoted by the strong color like maybe red or something like that. And as we start moving out, the blurriness of heat map increases, and at one point we don't see anything. So again, this is not the actual data, but this is a representation of the data. And this representation, for example, is known as heat map. Then there are other things which vary depending upon what library you are using, but still, like they are there. One of the important thing is interaction. So what do we mean by interaction? Interaction allows us to play with the existing data. Doesn't matter if it is view or if it is layer. It allows us to interact with it, and it can also mean that interact with the map itself. So so again, yeah, so that's also important, because you don't always just want to load the data and see it. You want to interact with that data. We will have a brief look at what all interactions are available in open layers. Then other things such as overlays are again part of this game. So I will put overlays, which means things that are not necessarily going to be part of the map, but we will overlay that on top of the map. And finally, we also have things such as um, controls, which are again absolutely important because they allow us to control different things of our map. So as we were speaking about that, we can change the zoom, or we can control the map the way it is rendered. All of those things can be made out of control. So to be honest, this is it. I mean, this is the concept of any WebGIS map that you want to work with. I'm pretty sure that the naming might be different. The type of layer or how many different types of layers you can add on a map will vary depending upon if you're using Openlayers versus Mapbox or something like that. But the idea is always going to be same. You will have a view which will define the look or the view of the map. Then you will have layers which will define all the actual data set that you want to visualize on the map. And then you will have additional things such as interaction controls and overlay to give interactions or to make your map more interactive and to play with it. I'll take a little bit of pause at this moment. I'll just check if there are any comments or something for this at this point, and then we will start again. So nothing over here, nothing over here as well, and I think we will continue. So again, I would like to request everyone, if you guys have any kind of questions, please let me know. Please put the questions in the LinkedIn comment and I'll make sure to answer those as soon as possible. All right, so this is all about the concept. Again, the reason of why I wanted to have concept talk first is if you start thinking in this direction, I think your way of visualizing how you are going to code or the way you are going to plan your code is going to be absolutely easy for you. Now you always know that whenever I want to put any interactive map on my application, I have to first of all initiate the map, then I have to initiate the view, then I have to add the layers, and if I want some extra functionality, I can add interaction controls and overlays to it. So this is how it is going to be. Now we are going to have a look at Openlayers. So let me give you a quick update on Openlayers. So Openlayers is currently running on version 10.2, which is in my opinion, it's really amazing. They have worked on some really cool features in Openlayers 10.2. That means you can add, I think you can add cloud optimized GeoTIFF for a long time, but they are much more faster now. You can also add Google Street Map officially as the base map for your application, and so on and so forth. Now, talking about Openlayers, one of the reason why I prefer this library is as a programmer, you always have to rely on two things if you want to work with any library. One is documentation and second is the existing examples available from which we can simply copy paste the design. And fortunately, Openlayers has aced in both of these things. Their documentation is absolutely amazing. Just you can go to the docs and you can have a look at all the documentation that they have under API. And this is pretty much it. Like all the functions that you can do with Openlayers are available over here. So for example, if I go with OL map, you will see how to initiate a map. You can read more information about map. You can see what all things you can pass as an option while initiating a new map, and you will also see what all events that you can fire with the map. So, and I think that this is really amazing because this actually tells me everything that I can do with Openlayers as a mapping library, which is really crazy. As you can see that in terms of event, there are so many events that we can trigger. For example, if you click on a map, if you double click on a map, if you start loading the map, if you end loading the map, if you start moving the map, if you end moving the map, if you start rendering the map, if you do single click. So this is really amazing. I mean, these are so many properties that you can actually play with, which makes it robust and almost useful in any use case. We have at Rotten Grapes, we have worked on multiple use cases where we were working with cadastral data, we were working with like cog data, cloud optimized geotiff data, where we actually wanted to do calculations on the fly, and Openlace is amazing. It is able to do that, and that's why I really find this interesting. The library is really interesting. On top of that, you can add interaction. You can see different methods like adding control, adding layer, adding overlay, and so many things. So this is all about the documentation. Now what about examples? So Openlayers has more than 250 examples, which pretty much covers a lot of things that are out there that you can do. For example, if you want to add vector data, you can simply search for vector and it will show you that you can add image vector, you can add mapbox vector tiles, you can add OGC vector tiles, you can even add vector layer, WebGL layer, etc. If I want to add GeoJSON, I can simply go to GeoJSON and it will show me an example of how to add GeoJSON. If I want to add WMS, I'll simply search for WMS and it will show me all the things that I can do with WMS. If I want to add a pop-up, again, I can just go to the search, I'll have a look at pop-up and I can just use that. And that's why I find this very interesting, is because a lot of the times we want to work on a problem statement that we think is very complicated, and when like we just have to go to the examples and find out what is the nearest. And pretty much every time I find a really interesting thing in this examples page, which becomes starting point for me to do anything. So again, really interesting stuff. Now there are as we move ahead uh, in OpenLayers 10, and I think from OpenLayers 5 onwards, they shifted to the npm version for all of their example and all of their APIs. If you are not using any JavaScript framework or even Node.js, and if you want to stick with basic CDN based vanilla JavaScript approach, you can still use the latest Openlayers. It's not a problem. But it will be a little bit of problem for you to understand that how do I implement the example, because if you have a look at any of the example, you will see that it's more about like creating a main.js file, doing imports, writing index.html and creating package.json. Now we will actually set up our map in both ways. We will do npm way as well as CDN way. For CDN, what I like to do is I like to go and use the version 4. I know it's quite old, it's like 2018, almost 6 years old, but the examples help me to understand how can I write the vanilla JavaScript code. For example, over here you can see that they have written a vanilla JavaScript code, which is something that we can just copy and it will work in any of the file. Now for this webinar, I will be starting a new repository on my desktop, and then we will start from there. So let me just pull out a new repository from over here. Right, let me close the stage manager. Okay, I'll just quickly check if there is any question, and there is no question. So yeah, let's get back. All right, so I'll just go to my desktop and I'll create a new folder, OL webinar, and I'll open it in VS Code. So I'm using VS Code as my code editor, but you feel free to use any code editor that you like. And there you go. So I'll start with creating a simple index.html file. Okay. And now what I will do is for the time being, I'll go to Openlayers 4.6.5 and I'll simply copy this first example. Now before explaining to you, let me just remove few things because this is not very straightforward example. I'll get rid of the zoom in, zoom out button and everything. All right, now let me go live. And there we go. We do have a map. Now let's understand how we have created the map. And again, I want you guys to remember the concept that we talked a couple of minutes ago. View, layers, and interaction controls. All right, now let's have a look at our index.html. So here we have simply pulled up a CDN of Openlayers 4.6.5. Again, if you want to replace it with Openlayers 10, it will still work. So even though the example and the documentation is considering is with keeping in mind that people will use it in Node project, they still work in CDN. So that's absolutely amazing. Now what we do is we first have to initialize a div. So create a div. It's Django. Let me make it HTML. create a div with certain ID. And this is absolutely important because this ID has to be referenced when we create our map. So that's why your div has to have some ID. So it can be anything. So I can have an ID with the name as like my map, but I'll also have to be sure that I'm using the same ID as um, for my CSS as well. All right, so that's done. Now we have initiated an ID, and now this is where the magic is happening. So first we are initializing the map. Now let's have a look at our concept and the code. So we have initialized the map. All right, map is there. Second thing is we are initializing a layer. So this is really interesting because that's what we are doing over here. We have layers. Then we have a target. Now target is important because this is what binds your div to this map initialization. And since I made my ID as my map, I will also change it over here. So now the target is my map. Then there is control. And where have we seen this word? We have seen it over here. And then we have a view which has center and zoom again. If you remember, we also said that view is mandatory. So view is mandatory and layers is mandatory. Everything else, to be honest, layers are not mandatory, but if you don't put layer, you will just see a blank screen. You will not see anything. So that's why I have kept layers as mandatory, but I mean, in theory, you can create a map without a layer. That is still fine. All right. So that means I can get rid of these controls, but not the target, which I think we should add over here because this is what binds our map. So I will put a small, um, I'll actually not put it like this. I'll put a very small thing known as target, which means we have to tell our JavaScript that with which div or which element in our HTML it has to talk with, and that's what target is all about. Okay, I'll make it on the next page, and there you go. We still have our map, and this is an interactive map. That means we can zoom in, zoom out with these buttons, or even with our application with our trackpad. And we can also zoom into certain location by keeping shift and then by pressing shift and then pressing the left key. We can select the region that we are interested in. I think we can do much more things, like for example I can rotate the map, rotate my map by using the options key. So again I can rotate the way I want it, and then I can actually get back to the north on top by using this control. Alright, so this is how we have initiated our map of open layers using vanilla JavaScript. Again, just to wrap up, we will have a look at what we have done. We have first of all created a div. Now before even that, we have initiated Openlayers JavaScript and Openlayers CSS CDN link. We have given a style of our map. Then we have initiated a div with the ID. Then we have initiated the variable with new ol.map, inside which we have layers, we have target and view, which are the most important things. Now here you can see that the reason why we are getting OpenStreetMap layer is because we have initiated a OL OSM layer. Now as I was saying that layers is not truly required, which means if I get rid of this, my map will still work, but of course now we don't have anything to look for, and neither we can zoom in and zoom out. I mean, we are zooming in or zooming out, but since there is nothing, we cannot see it. That's why we need to have layers. And we have our Openlayers application back. Now let's see how do we initiate the map in the latest version using Node. So you can just go to quick start, and there is already package available for us with the name as npm create ol map, which will allow us to actually get all the required dependencies, and it will also set up a little bit of map for us. So let me copy this and go to my terminal again and paste it over here. So it is now creating a folder with the name my app, inside which we will have all the application. Looks like my node version is quite old, so let me do npm install or maybe nvm install node. So this will probably just quickly pull up the latest node version. Meanwhile, let me see if there are any other questions, and yeah, there are no questions, so let's get back. All right, now we are on latest node, so let me do npm create. I'll get rid of this earlier folder, my app, and then I will do npm create ol app. And looks like it's done. So let me go back to my VS Code. And now if you see, we have this my app inside which we have bunch of files. Under package.json, you will see that we are using white as our dev dependency, and the actual OL dependency is done by OL. So OL is the actual npm package. So if you go to npm JS and search for Openlayers, you will get the OL package. Yeah, this is the one. So this is the default, or I would say the standard Openlayers package that we can use. All right, coming back to our VS Code. Now if you have a look at main.js, you will see that this structure is quite same, right? So we have target, layer and view, which is exactly what we also had in our index.html. That means our vanilla JavaScript. We had target, layer and view. So that's why I was stressing out on the methodology, is because once you understand methodology, it doesn't matter what library you are using or what way you are creating the application, it's always going to be the same. But over here we are doing few imports such as the map and view from OL itself, and then we are importing the tile layer and then OSM and things like that. Under index.html, you will see that we are simply referring to this main.js, and then that's all. So now I can just go to my application folder and do npm start. And there you go. We now have a map which is streamed from the latest Openlayers version. If I go to my application one more time, and let's say if I decide to change it to something like 100 comma 100 or maybe 100 comma 1000 and make the zoom as 12, probably we will still land up in the C, but it's much more closer. So maybe let me try to do something like 10,000 comma 1000. We are still in C, but again we are a little bit sideways. Now why this is happening, and what format is this? So this is the first question that a lot of people ask me who are just getting started with Openlayers, because in our mind most of the time we use lat long as our way of representing any point or any location, to be honest. But Openlayers by default uses coordinate system EPSG 3857. So it does not uses 4326, it uses 3857, and that's why you can put any crazy numbers like this and it'll work. So now you can see that we are somewhere near this coast. That means if I decide to make it like something like this, I'll be on the land. And this is a 3857 representation. But what if we don't want it like this? What if we want to show the data in EPSG 4326? You can just simply add projection and make it as EPSG 4326. And now you are free to use longitude and latitude. Please always remember that in Openlayers, longitude will go first and latitude will go afterwards. So let's try to put uh, interesting longitude and latitude. Let me try to search for Rotten Grips Private Limited, and there you go. I'll simply copy this and I'll paste it on my map. But remember that Google Map is latitude longitude and Openlayers is longitude latitude. I have spent so many hours because of this silly mistake that I put latitude first and longitude, and I was just spending hours and hours and never got the result. So that's okay. That's how it is. So it doesn't matter. And now there we go. So now we can see that Nasik is at the front, and if I make the zoom level as 18, we are quite close to where I am right now. So this is really interesting. All right. So we can put the projection just by mentioning that. But how do I know that like projection is a valid parameter or option that I can give? And that is exactly where we have to refer to the documentation available. So I'll just simply go to the documentation and search for OL view, or simply I'll search for view and I'll get to the OL view. Now I can just go down here and understand what all options that I can pass. So I can pass center, I can pass constraint rotation, I can pass enable rotation, that means do I want user to rotate, I can pass the extent if I want. So this is really interesting because if you want to use only certain area for your map and don't want user to go out of that area, you can just give the extent and that's all. You can pass resolution, max zoom, mean zoom, and somewhere down you can see that you can also pass projection. You can pass a lot of other things like rotation and all these kind of things, but projection is something that you can pass. And that's why the option of projection works. Now just to give you a spoiler alert, projection will only work with EPSG 3857 and 4326 unless you use proj4js. Again, if you are getting confused, the best way to do it is go to examples and see if they have any example with proj4js. And yeah, it's not a surprise that they do have the uh, example available for how to use proj4js. And that means I can see if I have to use any other projection system apart from 3857 or 4326, I can just put that over here and it will show me how to use that. And you can clearly see that when we do 32643, only Indian region is available. If I do 2193, only I believe New Zealand will be available, like that. So again, so this gives us an idea that potentially we can use any projection out there with Openlayers, which is really exciting for me. Let's see if there are any other questions, and no, so let's get back. So I'll also check it. So yeah, there are a few questions. So one of the questions is difference between CDN and NPM. Please explain. All right. And then there is another question which talks about what is the difference between JavaScript and vanilla JavaScript. I think both are quite related to each other. So let me give you a quick idea about what these things are. So when we say CDN, essentially we are talking about vanilla JavaScript, and vanilla JavaScript is nothing but JavaScript actually. So the way we write normal JavaScript in our index.html file. So for example, the example that we are looking at right now, it is a vanilla JavaScript because there is no Node.js involved, there is no like npm packages or anything involved. So this is a vanilla JavaScript example where we can write our essentially where we can get our packages as a CDN and then just use it. We don't need to import anything or do anything like that. The problem with this approach is that even though it is simple, but what we are doing essentially over here is we are loading this entire ol.js and then we are doing this. Whereas in our node based approach, we just import whatever is required for us. So for example, we require map, so we have imported map. We required tile layer, so we have imported tile layer, like that. So this is the main difference between using Node.js as our way of writing the code versus using vanilla JavaScript. Now most of the time with the latest front end development and updates happening, most of the people are using frameworks like React, Angular, Svelte, Vue, etc., which are all built on top of Node.js. That means you will have to use these packages from npm. You cannot import as a CDN and use it. You will have to get them done. You will have to use them from npm. So very simple example or very simple answer to this question would be that when you use JavaScript framework like React or something like that, you have to go to npm js and get the package installed from there. If you are creating a simple application, or maybe if you are using, let's say, a framework like Django, which uses HTML, JavaScript and CSS, that is where you can use this vanilla JavaScript approach and just import the CDN and use it. So this is the core difference. I hope I was able to answer you guys. Please let me know if you guys still have a question. We'll definitely have a look at it. Now, I know it's almost impossible to cover the entire open layers in 1 hour, and I certainly don't intend to do that as well. So as I said, as a part of our Technical Tuesday initiative, we will be keep on having these more and more workshops or webinars related to open layers, GeoServer, Postgres, Python, and all that kind of things. Again, if you want us to cover any particular topic, please do get back to us. Please do register yourself. We will definitely get back to you, and we would love to create this Technical Tuesdays initiative more and more helpful for the attendees. So yeah, uh, yeah. So if you guys have any questions or want to reach out to us at any time, please feel free to do that. Now, since there are no more comments, we will start with the second half of our webinar, that is to put different kind of layers. So as I said, there are various layers, and if you want to see what all layers are supported by Openlayers, you can just go to this method of layers. And now you can see that we have three, okay, maybe I am in the wrong page. I have to do OL layers and layers. Yeah. And now in order for us to create the layer, we will have to first of all understand what all different types of layers are available. So if I do OL layer, you can see that I have a tile layer, I have a group layer, I have image layer, I have vector layer, I have heat map, base tile, base image, WebGL tile, graticule, vector tile image, and so on and so forth. There are so many different types of layers. It's frustrating sometimes because you can do so many things with it. uh, it's not frustrating, it's confusing from time to time, because you have so many options to choose from. Even if you want to put image, you can go with the tile approach, you can go with the image approach, you can even go with the static image approach. It all depends upon what kind of use case do you have. When you want to put vector, you can put vector data as vector data itself, or you can use vector image, which is again another way of putting vector data. Again, this depends upon the use case, as I said. So let's now have a look at the example where we can add GeoJSON on our map. So I'll simply search for GeoJSON. Again, I don't want to spend time writing the code. I would rather copy the code and walk you through what all things that we are doing in this. For the sake of simplicity, I will try to do it in CDN first, and then we will go to the approach of NPM. So let me copy this and let me paste it over here. Now let me start my server one more time. And now you can see that we have this bunch of features on our map. So where are we getting these features from? Let's have a look at that. So now you can see that what we are doing is we are creating a style. Again, this is something that probably we will not do right now. We'll get rid of this style. But let's just have a look at this GeoJSON object. So we have a GeoJSON object which is in fact built in 3857. So since we are also having our map in 3857, we don't need to do any kind of reprojection or anything like that, which is possible in Openlayers. So even if your data is in 3857, you can reproject it in 4326 and then show it on map with the projection of 4326. That is absolutely possible. So for the time being, let's just say that our GeoJSON uh, feature collection is in 3857. We have a point data, we have line strings, we have polygons, we have multi-line strings, multi-polygon, etc., etc. Now first thing that we have to do is we have to understand that what type of data will actually use this GeoJSON. So since GeoJSON is a part of vector data type, it's an obvious thing that we will have to initiate a vector layer on our map, and that's exactly what we are doing over here. We are initiating a vector layer. Now just like how few moment ago we had a discussion about the concept of map, there is also something known as concept of layer. So what do we mean by that is all layers will have certain options that we need to pass in order to make that layer. So for example, uh, for initiating a layer of a vector type, we have to give source, which is mandatory, and we can give style, which is optional. Since it is optional, I'll get rid of this. And how do I know which is mandatory and which is optional? Again, for that I will refer back to the documentation. So again, please consider this documentation as your go-to tool even before you go to ChatGPT. I know that we live in a world where we can get everything on ChatGPT, but I still feel that going to the documentation is really important, because it not just only gives you answer to your question, but you always read more things and you always understand more things, which essentially is helpful for you in the future. So as we were talking about OL layer of type vector, so let me just search for vector over here. And as you can see that when I have to initiate a new OL vector, I have options. So what all options I have? I have render mode. And since there is an undefined available over here, which means that I don't need to give it. I mean, like, probably it will take on its own. Then we have render order, then we have map, then we have extent, then we have minimum resolution, opacity, which again there is a default value to it, so I don't need to give it. Then there is a source which is required, and that's how I know that this is required. Style, there is a default style available. That means even if we don't define it, even if we keep it undefined, it's still fine. It's not a problem. So you can see that a lot of these things can be undefined. So you don't have to worry about all of these things at all point of time. But again, my point is that once you start reading this, once you're reading about source, obviously you will also read about something else like extent, minimum resolution, and that's how your knowledge of open layers will grow. And that's why, like, let's get rid of the style for the time being. And then what we are doing is we are simply initiating a vector source. Now vector source is a different story altogether. Why do I say that? Is you can go to ol.source.vector, and here you can see that to create OL source of vector, there are few things that you can do. You can give format, you can give loader, you can give logo, you can give URL. That means even if you have hosted data somewhere, you can do that. In our case, we are going to use features, but since we don't have OL features, we are creating the features on the fly using this GeoJSON object, and then we are loading this vector layer on our map as a type of the layer, and that's how we end up having this layer on the map. Now you can see that since we removed the styling is gone. We are no longer able to see the styling. Now as I was saying that we can also fetch the data from the URL. Now what do we mean by that? So for example, I have this GeoJSON file with me. Let me just name it as sample. And now what I can do is, since I know that my data is in EPSG 4326, I will first of all make my map in projection system EPSG 4326. And now what I can do is I can just give URL, and I will first of all have to check the URL of this file. So I think it will be sample.geojson. Yeah, it is sample.geojson. So I will simply copy this, and since my sample.geojson and index.html is in the same folder, I can just do something like this, and hopefully it will work. Let's see. And it is telling me that it's not able to hit it. Let me see why. We have to give feature loader strategy. Okay, so we will have to do strategy like this. We cannot just simply put the URL, but we will have to get the loader, and we will have to get the data out. So which is something that is bit of a time consuming, so probably we will not do that for the time being. But if I simply copy this and if I use this in my fetch call, so I can also do something like this. So I can do fetch, where I get a sample GeoJSON, and then in the data, and this is the data that I use. So if I copy this and if I do again just similar way how features was there earlier, I'll just go to GeoJSON again, copy it from over here, and I use this data. All right. Let me check what's going on. So you can see that we are getting the data. So I think it's a good example for us to also debug and see what's going on. So let me just debug it. Yeah, so it is telling me that it's having problem with vector source. Reason being that we have this call in the then. So let me cut this from over here and also remove this from over here and then add it to the map. So I can do something like map dot add layer vector layer, and there you go. Now we have all the point data set available. So this is how you can play around with different types of layers, and then you can see how we can add different types of layers at all point of time. There is a question related to a sample of React Openlayers project. Can we do it? So yeah, definitely. Again, this is part of the lineup because in order for us to do that, ideally we will have the entire session where we will see how we can do that. So when we talk about React, or let's say any kind of framework that is out there, there are two ways to do it. One is where we treat this framework as just another JavaScript framework, and we still use npm to get the open layers and do the like installation and then use the package. Another way to use this is look for the library which is already available, which will do this for us. So for example, there is a library known as React Open Layers. So if you use something like this, you don't have to get npm install ol and then import ol and then create the map. You can just simply use the tags which are available from React Open Layers library, and you can just initiate the map. But the problem with these kinds of things is that you have to be very careful while picking up the library. You don't want to end up using the library which is not maintained or not used by a lot of people. So for example, this library, you can see it's clearly it's been like it was published 5 years ago, which is a red flag for me. Essentially, like I will not use it. So I'll just simply search for if there is any other library available. And this one looks interesting, R layers. So these are React component for layers, and this was updated a month ago, which gives me an idea that okay, maybe I can use this. So again, like I can do React like R layers installation, and then we can use R map, R OSM, R vector layer, etc. To be honest, I prefer to use the Openlayers library directly, because then there is essentially there is no downside to it. I mean, apart from taking little bit of more time in creating the project, there is no downside, because you can essentially use any method, any control, any interaction that is available from Openlayers, since you are using the raw npm package directly. But having said that, I don't want you guys to discourage I don't want to discourage you guys from using these kind of packages. But my suggestion is that always be very careful with which library you are picking up. So again, thanks a lot for comment, Ananda Kishore, about this. Please make sure that you also reach out to us via the Learn.js online platform, so that we will make sure that we arrange this webinar as soon as possible. There is another question related to how to reproject the layer I have in GeoServer before I add it on the map. Now there are two ways to do this, and since this is Openlayers webinar, I will try to give you answer from Openlayers angle and not from the GeoServer angle. In Openlayers, there is something known as transform. So let me quickly show you that as well. So probably I will try to first of all look if there is any transform available in this, and I think there is. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So there is a way where you can transform your coordinates, or your like your coordinates of your polygon from one projection system to another. Now, as I clearly mentioned earlier, 3857 and 4326 are by default available. That means you don't have to initiate those. But if you have any other projection, so in this case 21781, they must have initiated this. So you can see that they have initiated this projection first of all, added this to the projection list, and then they are using this projection. So if you are using any other projection, you have to be very sure about this. Now there is a way that when you are reading the data, so let me show you what you can do. So first of all, we will see the OL format of GeoJSON. Again, the documentation. So I'll go to the documentation and I'll look for GeoJSON. All right. So now here you can see that they ask you what is your data's default projection. So that means what is the projection of your data, and then what is the feature projection that you want. So what is the projection that you want your data to be in? Got it? So you can get your data in 4326, convert it into 3857, or get your data in 3857, convert it into something like 32643. It is absolutely possible. But this is something that you have to do while reading the feature. So for example, let's take an example of this one. So if I get rid of projection 4326, at the moment you will see that all of my data is in ocean, and again the reason being that our map is in projection system 4326. Now in reading, I think I can give projection, yeah, I can give data projection. So projection of the data we are reading. So my data projection, my feature projection is going to be 3857, and my data projection is going to be EPSG 4326. Now let's see if it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't, but that's how it works. Reason is we are saying that our data is in 4326, but I want you to present that data in 3857, and Openlayers is actually doing all the conversion for us. Now you can see that our map is actually in it's not in 4326, it's in 3857. So I hope I was able to answer you. Please shed some light on difference between shapefile and GeoJSON. Shapefile and GeoJSON are two separate formats to represent your vector data. Of course, both of these formats have their own pros and cons. I'm slightly biased toward GeoJSON. Reason being that it's quite widely used format, especially if you are into the development, because if you talk to any normal developer as well, they will say that when they work with API, they prefer to get the data in JSON format, and so on and so forth. And by using GeoJSON, we are essentially also using JSON format, so it's just easier. Will this video be available later? Yeah, we are recording this video session, and hopefully we will make this available later as well. Now to wrap up our today's 1 hour, I would like to end up this meeting with mentioning what all things that are possible with the map. So if you remember, I mentioned some time ago that we can also fire the event. Now let's try to fire one of the events and see how does it look like. So we have an event known as click, which means that a click with no dragging. That means if you click and do not drag, this particular event will be fired. So how do we execute this? Is by saying map.on, and this is where we give the name. So for example, click, and then we write the function that we are interested in. This function essentially will take EVT, which means the event itself, and you can print out so many things with it. So you can do console.log EVT coordinate, which means show me where I'm clicking. This is really amazing. You can also do something like console log, and you can get your map, get your view, and then get the zoom of your view. And now if I save this and go back to my application, if you see in my console, now I can click anywhere and it will give me the zoom as well as my coordinates. So if I click over here, if I click over here, you can see that we are getting coordinates as well as we are getting the zoom. So just like that, we can have so many different kinds of events that we can fire. So let me see where we are. Yeah, so one of the events can be move end. That means as soon as the move is end of our map, we want to see stuff. So for example, I want to see the zoom. Now you can see that as I move, as my map finishes its move, I get something in console. So now you can see I get something in console. I still get something in console like this. So yeah, so this is the power of open layers. We have gone through only one type of layer, but again, as I said, there are so many layers that we can use, and don't worry, we are going to cover uh, a lot of these things in our upcoming webinars. Now before ending this webinar, I would like to again let you guys know that please visit learnjsonline.com. This is where we are working on 3 courses which will be live very soon on Udemy for everyone to go through, and everyone can actually purchase these courses. These are going to be dirt cheap cost. So essentially the idea is that we just want to use Udemy as a platform, and for that we have to put some kind of cost, because these videos are going to be very lengthy. So consider open layers video as it's going to be at least 10 to 15 hours. GeoServer at least going to be 20 to 25 hours. PostGIS at least going to be 15 hours. So we are working very heavily on these courses, and we have already given the chapters and the topics that we are going to cover in these courses. If you have any recommendations, or if you want to get early discount for the courses, please get back to us. You can always again connect with us by putting your email ID or by simply reaching out to us on LinkedIn. We are running a discount right now for all the courses. Since this is a pre-launch session, we are not just in terms of monetary discount, but we are also considering the request from the people. So if you want to buy the course early, and if you want a specific thing for us to cover in that course, we'll make sure that we try to cover that in our course. Again, having said that, Openlayers, Postgres, and GeoServer are not the only courses that we are going to work with. We also have PyGeo API, Mapbox, CZM.js, GeoPython, GeoDjango, MapStore 2, and a lot of other courses coming up. So thanks a lot for everyone for attending this webinar. I hope it brought some value to you. If you like this webinar, please make sure that you comment on our LinkedIn, uh, saying saying how exactly this webinar turned out for you. And if you have any suggestion on how we can make this webinar better, please do reach out to us and let us know. Thanks a lot for attending, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you.